My whole life, like a lot of people, I just really love stories about crime, cop shows, all of that. And in all of the stuff that I ever came across, I never came across a crime involving someone impersonating a firefighter to carry out a home invasion.
October 31st, 2005, a psychotic, angry, disgruntled ex-employee of Women's Wear magazine went on a rampage that terrified the city of New York. After writing a manifesto of the sick and twisted desires that he had for members of the fashion industry, he decided to turn that into real life. And now, 20 years later, he claims that given the chance, he would pick up right where he left off. This is the story of Peter Bronstein. Hey friends, welcome or welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. It's so greatly appreciated. It truly, truly is. Before we get started, let me give you my usual disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. Please do not take what I say as fact. Please always do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Next, if you have not liked, subscribed, or commented yet, please consider doing so because it really helps me out and I really, really appreciate it. Okay, so let me put this out before we even get started. The beginning is going to be a little draggy only because there's certain information that I need to tell you guys for you to completely understand the story. So I need you to bear with me a tiny little bit so that we can get through this before we get to the really good stuff. Okay, so please stick around for me. Peter Bronstein's questionable behavior towards women dates all the way back to when he was in high school. When he was a senior, he broke into the home of a classmate that he had a crush on. It's unknown how he obtained the key to get into the home, but it's very much speculated that nobody that was living in the house at the time gave him permission to be in the residence. When the teenager's father arrived home, he walked into his daughter's bedroom and he caught Bronstein going through his teenage daughter's underwear drawer. No charges were ever filed against Bronstein, which is crazy. And no lessons were learned on his part either. It very much seems that this was the beginning of a sick and twisted game that Bronstein would play for decades to come. Minus a 3-year stint in Miami and spending the summer months in France and Italy, Peter grew up in Queens, New York in a 2-bedroom apartment. When he was older, he learned that his cousin Alan was also his half-brother. Okay, so prior to Peter's father getting together with his mother, Peter's father had Alan with the mother's sister. After the news came out the two were pregnant with Peter, they were shunned from the mother's family, and rightfully so, if I'm being honest. How do you, not even so much him, okay, mom, how do you sleep with your sister's husband or ex-husband or baby daddy? Like how are we doing this? In 1983, at the age of 19, Peter and a friend were accused of essay and arrested for R-wording a stranger at a Midtown hotel. At the time of the incident, Peter got a suspended sentence for trespassing, and the lawyer told his father that the case would be sealed, stopping his son from any criminal record. So again, this probably explains why he just kept doing dumb shit, because his whole childhood he was doing dumb illegal shit that he was getting away with. In the late 1980s, Peter got a job as a reservation agent for British West Indian Airlines. From there, he studied history at Sorbonne in Paris, George Washington University, the University of Maryland, St. John's University on Long Island, and New York University. Friends have described Peter as an unvarnished intellectual who lived in a world of ideas and didn't care about having money or status. During this time, Bronstein would meet and later marry a fellow reservation analyst by the name of Donna Keene. Donna was described as a sweet and nurturing woman who was 5 years Peter's senior. Donna supported Braunstein when he wanted to go back to school for his master's degree. She was a loving and devoted wife to Braunstein and was devastated when he divorced her out of nowhere in 1994 after falling for another woman by the name of Deborah Michaels. Donna's divorce attorney would later say that there were no accusations of ABUSC during the divorce proceedings and that the only request Donna had for her husband was that he pay his portion of the credit card debt. Like, that's, oh my God, if that's not the best deal ever, she let him off so easy. Peter and Deborah met a year before the divorce and would continue the relationship for 9 years post-separation and divorce from Donna. At the time, Deborah, who was a very beautiful and quite intelligent woman, worked as a journalist at Women's Wear Daily and was pursuing a PhD in feminist history at NYU. Deborah was also married at the time, but after her divorce in 1995, her and Peter would move in together into an apartment in Greenwich Village. In 1996, Braunstein would write an article named Stalking Kate, which would eventually be published in Black Book magazine. The article stated that he had fallen hopelessly in love with supermodel Kate Moss, going on to say in the article, this is crazy, going on to say in the article that she was stalking him, staring at him from billboards and magazine ads, and seducing him every time he turned on E! And VH1. He would even disclose in the article that his love for Kate had grown so deep that he kept a picture of her by the bed that he shared with Deborah. I mean, whatever works for their relationship, I guess. In 1998, Braunstein decided to drop out of his PhD program, claiming that he was tired of academic life and wanted to follow his new passion, which was to get into magazines and become a cultural critic. 2 years after dropping out of the program, his money was drying up. That's why it was a huge break for Peter when he got a job working at Women's Wear Daily in the spring of 2000 at 36 years old. The first article Peter wrote for the magazine was on the history of leather as a renegade fashion element. Perfectly acceptable article, right? Completely acceptable. Goes along with the theme of the magazine. It's the second article that began to raise a red flag, especially given the events that were yet to take place. Peter's second story, published in October of 2001 about Guy Borden, explored the disturbed photographer's cruelty towards women, his mother fixation, and his sadomasochistic obsessions. The story ran alongside a picture taken in 1980 of a nude woman lying face down with blood red paint flowing from her mouth, with Peter proclaiming that the beauty of the photograph was more powerful than the brutality. Really? In the fall of 2001, while still living with Deborah, Peter began dating beauty editor Jane Larkworthy. At the time, Deborah Michaels was becoming more stable in her career and wanted a home of her own. Peter was nowhere near the same in his life, and that's when cracks began to form in their relationship. As the two grew further and further apart, Peter's anger grew more and more intense, and his outbursts grew more frequent. As far as his relationship with Jane Larkworthy was concerned, on the surface, they seemed to be a very well-matched, sophisticated couple. But friends of Jane saw the relationship very differently. They described Peter as arrogant, domineering, and what was once a disdain for him eventually turned into genuine concern for Jane. In the spring of 2002, things were going very well for Bronstein. His column in the magazine was receiving incredibly favorable feedback, and magazine editors were writing him letters in hopes of gaining his favor. By the summer, Bronstein's personality had changed drastically. Peter was always in a bad mood and would repeatedly have outbursts of anger at the drop of a hat, with people describing him as having a manic type A tendency to rage at coworkers and others in his life. By October of that same year, everything would come crashing down for him. Bronstein called a publicist at Vogue magazine to ask him for a second ticket for his girlfriend to that year's VH1 Vogue fashion show. The request was initially turned down, and Bronstein blew up at the publicist. Shortly thereafter, the publicist was able to get him the second ticket, but that ticket didn't come without reprimanding email from the editor. An email that Peter replied to with a simple, "Go fuck yourself," before walking off the job. Oddly enough, Bronstein was going to be given a second chance from the magazine to keep his job, but after he refused to apologize to the editor, he was fired, as he should be. I mean, the fact that you told your editor to go F off because they couldn't get you his second ticket, which you would have gotten anyway if you just kept your fucking cool, is astounding to me. Like, I can't believe that he was even going to get a second chance. But it's even more surprising that he screwed that up too. One coworker has surmised that Peter was offended by the hypocrisy because everyone in fashion journalism gets tickets, favors, freebies, and designer bags. Going on to say that everyone gets things but aren't allowed to keep them, except for the more powerful people who get things that others can't. Again, this is not new information. Like, this happens everywhere. Not just in the fashion industry. So I guess because he worked in the fashion industry, he took it so personally, but this is not something new. This happens everywhere. It's very much giving, "I want it now, Daddy." In July of 2003, Jane Larkworthy told Peter that she was no longer happy and wanted to end the relationship. This would be the first time that Peter would ever become violent with Jane. He became so enraged by her wanting to part ways that he taped her to a chair and began waving a knife at her, threatening to destroy her professionally and otherwise. Frightened for her life and unsure how to get him out of her home, Jane decided to pretend that she wanted to reconcile the relationship. In November of that same year, Jane tried to break up with Peter for a second time. This time, Peter would up the ante. He picked up a kitchen knife and began cutting himself. Police were called and he was taken to the psychiatric ward at Bellevue Hospital. The visit would be short-lived, though, and he was released just a few hours later after being declared sane by doctors in the hospital. Doctors who may want to consider a new career path, given what happens later on in the story. On January 8th of the following year, Peter told a gossip column that it was Larkworthy who attacked him while wearing a Victoria's Secret teddy and high heels before calling the police and telling them that he did it to himself. And if you believe that, then I have a bridge that I can tell you. After his false accusations about Larkworthy, the last of the people who were on Peter's side had cut him off indefinitely. With nowhere left to go, Peter moved back to his mom's home in Queens, New York. Once he moved back to his mother's house, he pretty much cut himself off from the rest of the world and began an 18-month campaign against Jane and the fashion industry in general. It would be during this time that he would begin his manifesto of revenge before playing it out in real life. He would call Jane at work hundreds of times a day. He would threaten her. He would play recordings. This is very childish, if nothing else. He would play recordings of women having orgasms. He would also write letters to her bosses telling them that Jane was unstable and dangerous. And if that wasn't enough, he would post nude photos of Jane on the internet as well as to her employers, along with her phone number attached to them. Imagine doing shit like this in your 40s. Like, this is shit that you do when you're 15 years old. And imagine doing shit like this in your 40s, all because somebody wanted to end a relationship. Like, it's not only is it childish and immature, it's twisted. In the spring of 2004, Peter began working on a play and promoting a play that would absolutely flop after its release. This would send Peter into an even worse tailspin than before. The play opened in June of 2004 and just 10 days later it closed. I mean, I get it. What a blow. Like, you work so hard on something and then it just flops 10 fucking days later. During the 10 days that the play was open, Peter would call his actresses late at night to rant and smash his head on the sidewalk as a publicity stunt. After the closing of the play, Peter went into a deep depression. He started applying for several jobs in journalism, but was turned down for every single one of them. In October of 2004, Peter was hospitalized once again after mixing beer with an overdose of antidepressants in an attempt to unalive himself. If you guys are still here, thank you. I had to get all of that stuff out of the way for you to better understand how the next part of this story evolves. February 3rd, 2005, Peter is arrested and charged for stalking, harassing, and menacing Jane Larkworthy. In March of 2005, he began putting his sick and twisted plan into effect. He started by placing his first order of chloroform on eBay, followed by a second order that was placed in May. Side note, since when can we just go and buy chloroform on the internet?
I bought all the equipment off of eBay, and it took a while, because you have to bid and do that whole bidding thing.
Was this always a thing? Like, this is actually a genuine question. Like, since when can we do this? Oddly enough, though, his anger wasn't directed at Jane this time. It was directed at the fashion industry.
Now, when I became alienated from the fashion world and became, like, enraged, at Jane Larkworthy and that sick relationship and the way it ended, I in my mind had this thing where, like, all that was horrible to me that I attributed my downfall to, it all had something to do with the fashion world.
He was contacting at least 3 women in the industry at the time via phone calls and emails, threatening to ruin their lives and careers. Oddly enough, he wasn't contacting his future victim. Side note again, for context, his future victim did work with him at the magazine and did know him as an acquaintance. They were not friends whatsoever. By July of 2005, Peter was still working hard on his manifesto, The Making of a Menace, a manifesto that ended with the line, "We've taken a wrong turn as a race and have nowhere left to go." That same month, Peter purchased more chloroform and a New York City firefighter's jacket from eBay. September 7th, 2005, Peter was sentenced to 3 years probation and 5 days of community service for his harassment of Jane. That same month, he went back onto eBay under a different screen name, where he ordered even more chloroform and New York City Fire Department pants. In late October of 2005, Peter renewed his passport, cleared his belongings from his mother's apartment, and told his parole officer that he wouldn't be able to check in with them on Halloween because he was having surgery at Mount Sinai Hospital. October 31st, 2005. Today was the day that Peter Bronstein had chosen to live out his sick and twisted revenge on the fashion world, specifically targeting an ex-coworker that was merely an acquaintance of his.
She knew people who I knew people who she knew, but we ourselves never intersected.
Mind you, these two worked together for about 2.5 years, and they've never said more than 3 words to each other. He heads over to her Manhattan apartment dressed as a New York City fireman, sets off a few smoke bombs, and begins banging on the victim's door. He makes her way into the apartment, puts a gun to her head, and puts a chloroform rag over her face.
I in my mind had this thing where, like, all that was horrible to me that I attributed my downfall to, it all had something to do with the fashion world. So this person who we're talking about, the victim, as an abstraction, seemed to fit the profile of everything that I hated.
The victim knocks out and he places her on the bed, strips her naked except for her underwear, ties her up with a green cord, binding her hands and one leg to the bed, takes her shoe collection out of her closet and places a pair of shoes on her feet. When she wakes up, her attacker has a ski mask on and a video camera set up. He held her hostage for 13 hours, fondling her breasts and putting his fingers inside of her. At one point, he gave her a sleeping pill, took a sleeping pill himself, then lay down next to her and took a nap. Because her attacker wore a ski mask for the majority of the night, it was very difficult for her to ID him. He did, however, give away a few context clues that helped them piece together who her attacker was. Peter told his victim that he was born on January 26th. He also told her that he had been fired from Fairchild Publications, which happens to be the sister company of Women's Wear Daily. At one point, he did remove his mask, and the victim was able to see that he had curly hair. I should say that she had her eyes taped, but she could kind of see through the tape, so she didn't see his full face. She saw it through the tape. After the 13 hours was up, Bronstein steals a jacket, a purse, and her resume and her driver's license. Leaves her a message on her mirror in lipstick that reads, "Bye, hope things turn around for you soon." And he quietly exits the apartment. She waits a bit to make sure Peter is really gone, unties herself, and phones a friend, former colleague of hers from the magazine. Okay, so you have to understand at this moment, she is petrified to call the police and the fire department because that is who just attacked her. Her friend arrives, calls the police, and sits down with the victim while she tells her story. After everything is done, the friend leaves, goes to the director of Fairchild to inform him of what happened. As the friend is telling Patrick McCarthy the story, something clicks in his head and he tells the friend, "Oh my God, Peter Bronstein, you have to call police." Following the attack, Bronstein goes to a hotel room feeling like he's the luckiest guy in the world because he just pulled this off. But when he turns on the TV, he sees that his story is already running on news channels and decides to get out of Dodge. He hops a bus and heads over to Columbus, Ohio. When asked why Columbus, Ohio, Bronstein replies, "Who would be looking for me in Columbus, Ohio?" Okay, not completely wrong, because at the time nobody was looking at Columbus, Ohio, but like everything else, it would all eventually catch up to him. Police released a sketch of the person they were looking for, and day after day, it was front page of all the newspapers and magazines. In other words, it was only a matter of time. But that did very little to help ease the fear of New Yorkers. Police still had Bronstein's computer from the harassment charges that were filed against him from Jane. And inside the computer, they found a detailed step-by-step on how somebody could set off a smoke bomb, set off a fire, pose in bunker gear, get chloroform, overpower a woman. The entire step-by-step scenario was detailed in his computer. Peter Bronstein would spend almost 2 months on the run.
I actually had an itinerary. I went to Cleveland to see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Then I always wanted to see Graceland because I'm like kind of an Elvis fan. By this time it was really heated up.
Then on December 16th, 2005, a college student at the University of Memphis spotted him on campus, recognized him, and phoned police. When officers approached him, Bronstein stated, "I'm the guy you're looking for." He then proceeded to stab himself in the neck more than a dozen times with a 3-inch blade. He would survive this ordeal, and after his recovery, say that he can't believe that he missed unaliving himself because he researched and studied the carotid artery. I can't with this guy. I just can't with this guy. May 23rd, 2007, Peter Bronstein was sentenced to 18 years to life for kidnapping, SA, robbery, and burglary. His mother would later say that she had... This is twisted. This is so twisted. His mother would later say that she hoped her son would unalive himself as she didn't feel that he was capable of surviving prison life. What? As opposed to, you did the crime, you did the time, like, this is why your son is the way that he is. During his trial, prosecutors stated that he exacted revenge against his ex-girlfriend and the fashion industry that had rejected him by selecting a victim whom he knew only in passing, who worked in the desk next to his ex. His defense team stated that he had undiagnosed paranoid schizophrenia, which caused him to spiral into deep depths of mental illness. Bronstein's victim took the stand, and she told the court that she wouldn't let the real first responders into her one-bedroom apartment because she was just attacked by someone she believed to be just that. Makes sense, right? She spoke about how she was stripped of all her clothing, minus her underwear and a pair of shoes, while Bronstein's knife laid next to her on the nightstand. She spoke about how she attempted to calm her attacker by engaging him in conversation. They spoke about their zodiac signs and how they both had been let go from their jobs at the magazine.
People want, like convicts, to say, I have remorse, right? But they're not going to treat you any... They don't really care. You're a scumbag. They ultimately don't care whether you're a remorseful or unremorseful scumbag, because you're still a scumbag. So what incentive is there exactly to be remorseful?
When Bronstein was tired of engaging in conversation with his victim, he would just chloroform her. I think he did it like 5 or 6 times. Or he would put electrical tape over her eyes and her mouth. When she would pretend to go to sleep, the chloroform would burn her face while the green rope made her wrists bleed. At one point, 2 of the victim's friends came to her door because they were calling her and she wasn't answering the phone. And Bronstein told the victim in no uncertain terms, if your friends enter the apartment, they're dead. Luckily for everyone, after the victim didn't answer, the friends just left. The victim goes on to say that she would randomly feel him run his hands over her breasts and between her legs. She would hear him put latex gloves on and take them off. She would hear the wooden floor squeaking as he rummaged around her apartment. She would hear the sound of the video camera. At one point, believing she was asleep, she heard him rummaging through her closet. She heard him breathing as he lied down next to her when he took the nap. After Braunstein stole her lavender Gucci jacket, her Louis Vuitton travel bag, her resume, and her license, she listened to him zipper the bag, then heard the front door open, then close. In a jailhouse interview, Braunstein said, "It's a good thing I'm locked up because I've been having violent fantasies and I don't know what I'm capable of." If you guys are still here, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you and I appreciate you so, so, so very much. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't yet and you feel so inclined to, because it really helps me out and I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay safe out there.